And then I realized as I'm rocking her, there is a red orb of light right in front of me.
Out in the woods, shadows creep slow. Footprints deep where no man should go. Cold winds howl through hollers and brooks. Whispers of Bigfoot in the way it looks. Myths, monsters, and bullets in the night. Under a pale moon, strange glowing light. Truth out there like a blade it cuts. Myths, monsters, and bullets run amok.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Myths, Monsters, and Mullets. I am your host, John Methenkamp. If you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share, you can email me at mythsandmullets@gmail.com. And when I say paranormal, I mean anything. You've seen a ghost, maybe you saw Bigfoot, maybe you saw a UFO, maybe you were abducted by aliens. I want to hear about it. mythsandmullets@gmail.com. Make sure you're checking out the descriptions down below. You're going to see all my favorite podcasts. Nevermore Hollows, Drunken Cryptids, Chumming with Spirits, Ghost Gossip. So many great podcasts. I love them. I think you will too. I listen to them every week. You should be binging these people. They're great shows. Check out the links in the description. I really do appreciate all the support you guys have been giving me over the last couple months. It has been amazing. If you haven't yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Comment on one of my videos. Tell me how I'm doing. Maybe give me some ideas. Maybe you want to be a guest on the show. You can do that as well. Also, hit that like button. Share it out with a friend. That's the only way we can grow. If you're interested in supporting the show, there's an easy way to do that. Over on Spotify, for $2.99 a month, it's only 10 cents a day, you're going to get members-only episodes, free episodes, meaning no intros, no music, just interviews, and no sponsor ads. So if you're interested in helping me support the show, head over to Spotify, click on one of the member episodes, and for $2.99 a month, you're going to get all this bonus footage. And with that, let's start the show. Welcome back to Myths, Monsters, and Mullets. I am your host, John Methenkamp. On tonight's show, we have Adam Clark, all the way from Iowa. He commented on a post I made on Facebook, said he had some paranormal encounters. I think we're going to talk about some orbs tonight. Adam, how you doing tonight?
Good. Yep, good. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, as little or as much as you want?
I am 47 from Iowa. I tattoo for a living. Artist and musician, father of 4 kids, husband. I've had paranormal experiences for probably, I would say, at least 17 years or so. But, I mean, let's back it up a little bit. So before any paranormal experiences, I had 2 children and a band, and I was tattooing, and I owned my own tattoo shop at the time, and I had no real thoughts about paranormal stuff. I was so focused on writing music, being a new dad, which was stressful, being a new business owner, which was stressful, being in a new industry, which was stressful. I mean, I was in over my head in responsibilities and being a boss.
Let's face it, not even just being a new dad is stressful. Just being a dad in general is stressful, whether it's new or old.
Well, yeah. And I was new, and I'll be honest, I was struggling a bit, and as a accepting, like how drastically different your life changes when you have kids. So I mean, let's just say I did not conjure this as far as I knew. I did not ask for it. I did not anticipate it. I did not research it. Um, and so when this happened, and this by meaning the first paranormal experience, uh, it's not like amnesia, but it's like it took me 2 years to really come to terms with that even happened. Partly too because of like all the things that were going on in my life. I got divorced that year, and there was just a lot going on. So I didn't have time to think about it. And maybe there was another reason why I wasn't thinking about it, and that comes later. But
So let me ask you this: what were your thoughts on the paranormal before having an encounter?
well, like I said, I didn't think about it, but I know myself, and I know that I was open to it. I pretty much thought anything was possible without thinking about it too much. Um, but so when this happened, it took me a while, and then I started researching. Then I started becoming almost, I mean, borderline obsessed, where it was taking over my entire, like everything from my art, my music, my daily routine. I was researching, reading, taking notes, trying to figure this stuff out. Um, and sobriety does play a role in this too, because uh, prior to this experience, I didn't care a lick about sobriety, and the experience. I don't want to say it like sparked that, but it definitely was in the vicinity timeline of like all these other things happening, and it was one of the many things happening at that time that kind of sparked that, right? But so I'll just get into the first thing, because there's many of these things. Like I'll probably, if you enjoy what this story is, whatever, we would probably be on again, because I'm not going to be able to tell all these things, but in one sitting. But um, so the first thing is that every time I've seen anything, I've been sober. And that is very weird for me, because I'm very, at this time especially, very rarely sober. Um, so the first occurrence was at 3 a.m. in the morning. Okay. My, like literally almost on the nose. I still remember this. Like this was forever ago. And I've told this story many times because I'm open to sharing it. I feel like part of my journey is to share these things, and because of my job, because I'm a tattooer, because I sit down with people for hours and hours and hours and hours. I'm with these people, so I get to know them, and I feel very comfortable almost immediately, especially in my element. So I've told this story many times, but I only tell it to the people that I feel could either use it somehow, they're ready for something like that, or they're like kind of poking at that, like I'm curious about this stuff, or whatever it is. There's always a reason why I share it, and there's reasons why I don't share it also. I don't just tell it to anybody. I'll tell it to the people that feel like could benefit from it. But again, I'm very comfortable speaking about it. Even if somebody didn't believe me, I don't care. If they were interested in hearing it, I'll tell them.
That's the way I
Um,
feel about it too. It's true. You shouldn't be ashamed of telling people or letting people know that this stuff exists.
I think that's just culture. I think that people become accustomed to their culture. And so if you were brought up to mind your P's and Q's, and you don't speak unless you're spoken to, I mean, you're not going to be sharing your ghost stories. You know, it's kind of Whereas if you're a kid that's free to roam and like, screaming and running around dirty, muddy feet and like, maybe you're more apt to sharing stuff like that. I don't know. It's just, I feel like in certain cultures, it's just like frowned upon to share personal things like that.
Well, we're of a similar age, so I know growing up, the paranormal wasn't something that was talked about in my house. Ghosts weren't real. Bigfoot
You know,
wasn't real.
yeah, what's wild about that is that my grandfather was the one to share those things with me.
That's
My
awesome,
mother
actually.
my mother never talked to me about that stuff. My father never talked to me about that stuff. My grandmother, she was very much a part of my life, but she didn't tell me a lot of stories and stuff like that. But my grandfather told me many stories and like war stories and fishing stories and ghost stories and stories about seeing Jesus in his dreams and like just all sorts of things that you would never think that a grandfather would be able to share with his kid. And he's such a huge influence on me. So I think that was a big part of like being so open to this stuff. For sure. And then just the culture itself. He's Mexican, and that culture is rooted in a lot of that stuff, whether they're exposed to it or not. I feel like there is an element of like, I don't know, like native blood. Um, there's always that curiosity of like what did they mean by that stuff? So like I've always been intrigued by ancient history and civilizations and stuff like that. But back to the orb thing. Basically, 3 a.m. in the morning, and my then at that time I had he would have been well, no, at that time I had three kids. I take that back. I did have three kids. Oh shoot. Yeah,
Time
so
flies, man. Time flies.
I had my son, my first daughter, and then my third daughter. She was the baby at the time, literal baby. She was like a year and a half old, and she started crying. And so it was my turn to get up. Got up, went downstairs to her room. Uh, and this part is kind of like, I mean, the major things about that night stick out, and I remember them vividly. But like things like, was it there when I came in the room? I don't think so, but I don't know. I was focused on picking up the baby, right? First thing, pick up the baby, picked up the baby. And then I realized as I'm rocking her, there is a red orb of light right in front of me. And it was so you can see me and hear me. Just if you can't hear me, let me know. But, a crib is, if my chest is in front of it and I'm standing up, these cribs, like, they're kind of high. And like you lift and push in the railing and then lower it, and then this toddler is able to get to you, right? So it's one of those things. And I didn't lower the railing. I just picked her up and I was holding her, and this light, I'm just gonna call it a light now, it just shows up right in front of me right now. It's so you can see where my hand is. It is that close to me. It is
Really?
right is where my hand is right now, but like a little bit lower. And it was above the railing of the baby's crib. It was above the railing, okay? So there was a distance below it, a space, and it was away from the wall. Okay. Now this light, it was an orb. So I if you were to just take a picture of this thing, it wouldn't come out. Okay, because it was so dense of a light that I couldn't see through it, but I also couldn't, I could only tell, I mean, it didn't look flat by any means, but like it was so dense of a red, pure primary red light that like you had to kind of move your head to tell that it was 3D, because the way this light behaved was not like how we typically see light behaving. So like I would almost have to relate it to, like, you know, those kids lamps that go in their bedroom that have like a almost not transparent, it's almost opaque plastic casing around the light bulb, and the light goes to that casing and then it lights up the light or the plastic.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I know what you're
the
talking about.
light, and it diffuses, so like beyond that it's not like a flashlight would be. It's not like just beaming out from there. It's like faint, you know?
Right.
And but it'll still reflect off of the wall and stuff like that. This thing was so dense and so bright in its core and what it was, but the light acted like what I just described, in that it didn't light up the room. It was just like the light was contained in this ball and it was bright red and it was right in front of me. And
Oh,
so, and at the moment, like me just describing like all that, like gets my heart going. But in the moment, like I had no thoughts other than, what is that? I mean, it's simple as that. Simple as that. There was no like any other thought than, what am I, basically, am I seeing that? And I remember doing this. I need my glasses to see, even at, you know, when I'm walking through the house.
right.
So I know I had my glasses on. I did this. I remember looking behind me because the window was behind me. There was a window to my left, and both of the blinds, you know, those cheap plastic blinds that
Like
everybody has.
yeah, like
The-
yeah, the
yeah.
twist things and they open
Yep.
up.
Those were closed. Okay. So nobody was, even if someone was shining a laser, it would not look the way this thing looked.
Well,
There's,
it
it's
sounds like
impossible.
it been too big for like a laser pointer or anything like that.
Oh my God. Yeah. It was the size of a softball.
Wow.
Um, it now my that's my memory. It may have been a little smaller, you know. But I looked, you know, the windows were drawn, and the next thing I remember doing is looking down at the nightlight, because the nightlight was always plugged in, and it's in, you know, it's in the outlet. It's down at the baseboard, and it's a freaking out. It's a nightlight. It doesn't look any different than anything than it did before, you know. So like, so at this point, I look back up and I'm like, okay, I'm seeing this. This next thing is very hard to describe, but I'll try my best. Basically, it goes from where it was right in front of me. I usually use hand motion. It's
You're
hard to
fine.
do. Like,
I can see you
uh,
and hear you. If you want to use your hands,
okay,
that's fine.
okay. I love using my hands because they're so hard to describe. Okay, so it's right here in front of me. Right. I I come to the conclusion that, okay, I am seeing this. It is a ball of red light in my house. Okay. And that's when it goes from here to here. It literally just goes, and it's not, it doesn't float over. Okay. It doesn't fly over there. It doesn't make a trail, nothing like that. It literally goes from one spot to the other with no sign of it traveling there other than it just being there. It just went.
Holy cow.
And now the second, now where it was the same thing, it was like it was sitting on, I mean, like literally in my mind, I remember feeling this, like it's sitting on the railing, but it's okay. Same thing. It's like above the railing and it's away from the wall, but it's like in this perfect static position where it was so it wasn't like this, you know, how you would imagine. Oh, it was static. I can't even, it was as still as the stand that my phone is on. And so then I was like, okay. And then from it quickly, after I recognized it over here, went back to the original spot. Same way. It didn't go, I didn't see it go over. It just instantaneously was back over here in front of me. Now I'm like, okay, this thing is conscious. Like, this was the feeling I was getting, was like, this thing is not just some inanimate light. And so I said, because my first concern in that moment, in that context, even then, as young and dumb as I was, my concern was my kid. And I said, "This is my child's room. Could you please leave?" I said this out loud. And I went to wave my hand through it, and just normal, like that, And right before my hand in slow motion, I'll do it. Right before my hand got there, it disappeared.
Wow.
And then my hand passed through where it was. Now that was the first time I saw this.
So did it make any noise?
No noise.
No noise.
Absolutely zero noise.
Okay,
Any questions you have too, because that's
yeah,
one thing.
I,
People
I, I
don't know
wrote down,
what
I
to
wrote down
ask,
one here and I was waiting for you to finish the story a little bit. A little personal, but how was your daughter's health at the time?
She was healthy. She's a very healthy kid, but I'm glad that you asked that because that's along the lines you should be thinking.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. We can table that for a minute.
yeah, yeah. So, again, back to my life at the time, I was way too effed up to comprehend. In fact, I don't even remember going to sleep that night. I'm sure I did. I'm sure I rocked the baby to sleep. She went to bed. Everything went as normal. Got up the next day, went to the tattoo shop. Everything just continued. So then 2 years go by, and now my life has changed. Now I'm divorced. I'm living on my own. I see the kids, half the time, and things have changed. Now I started having strange things happening that did not involve an orb. So there are other things there that are whole other stories. And
Is this all in the
and
same house?
no, like I said, I had gotten divorced. I was living on my own in a single bedroom apartment above the tattoo shop. Um, Completely different environment, same basic neighborhood. Okay, but again, when I see this red orb again, it's not in the same house. It's years later. Excuse me. Um, but when I started recalling this event, I was like, what the hell was that? And this is like 2 years later. And I'm like, what was that? What the heck? That really happened. It just like came to me all of a sudden. And this was amongst other things that were going on in my life where I needed to rehabilitate myself from all sorts of things. And so that coincided with my kind of awakening. I kind of uh, correlated with that in a way, a sort of just an awakening. I don't even know if I would say spiritual at the time because I think I had so much trauma that I was working through that um, I just had a lot to shake off. But even in those times, there were other things going on, and I'm talking about spirits, voices, telepathic messages, uh, out of body experiences, astral projection. All these things happened within those few years, and so I understand a little bit about all that stuff. But um, and I have a lot of experience in my own way with it. The other thing that goes with that, and we'll get back on orbs here in a bit, but this is important. And a lot of people dismiss this, and I think that it's very naive to dismiss it. But the element of psychedelic, and I'm not talking about LSD and mushrooms, and I've always been a fan of those, but I don't, when I was younger, I did them a lot. As an adult now, like I said, I'm in my late 40s. I'm not doing that stuff. It has its uses, and I'm still interested in those uses, but it's not something that you just do for fun. Now, that being said, there is something else called DMT that is very different, and people like to put it in the same box as the other two, and it does not belong in that box. it is a completely different thing. Now, if you have any experience with the first two things and you haven't tried the third, you might have a misconception as to what I'm even about to say here. But basically, what I think it is a tool, that it is a tool that, and our ancestors have used it. I think that it is a tool that is used to bypass the body's inability to connect to that higher dimension, which is just a higher frequency. You know, the higher frequencies are unavailable to us because we have been in these situations for so long, meaning like cityscape situations, where we feel compelled to be like on top of each other and in these very dense populated areas. Well, those have a tendency to affect us in ways that we don't have a clue because we've lived our whole lives here. Now, DMT is used to bypass what has been pretty much taken offline. So if you imagine like the spirit realm as online, we don't have access to it in these bodies for the most part. And DMT bypasses the body's inability, and it gives that consciousness the ability to see beyond the spectrum that the body is able to see in, and to feel and communicate beyond what the body's able to. And so I've had that experience. So I've had those, and a lot of that goes into things that go well beyond what people are willing to talk about and accept. And that is basically, if you've heard anything about DMT, you'll know that a lot of people say the same thing. Oh, I heard this guy went and he said that he met aliens, and that, um, I'll tell you right now, that's what they're doing. that is what's going on. And that a lot of people's conception as to what an alien race would look like or be like it's so far beyond our understanding that people laugh at it. The idea that DMT could be a portal, and they don't even give it a chance. But now, backtrack a little bit, then I'll move forward pretty quickly. At the time, I was messing around still with shrooms and LSD and lots of pot and even drinking, which I don't drink. I'm alcohol free for years now. But at the time, I was still kind of dabbling in some of that, even though I knew the time was coming to where I was starting to understand that I needed to start shedding these things, right? During that time, one of my friends was like, he's really into like, of course, psychedelics, there's like raves and that thing, and he's a DJ and like, so he comes from that circle and had access to DMT. And of course, at the time, I'm like, yeah, let's do this, had no clue what I was getting into. So that first time we did it and we didn't leave here. We stayed here, meaning I stayed in my body. I was able to see what was around me and see frequencies that I was not capable of seeing prior to that. And it blew my mind. And I related it to LSD and shrooms and stuff, but I soon realized that that's not what I was seeing, because we did it again. And it was a year later, and I had done a lot more research and a lot more reading, and I had realized what we were messing around with was not a toy, and that we needed to take it more seriously. So at that time, I started learning about meditation and stuff like that, because I was going through therapy. I mean, there was all sorts of things also going on at the time. But that second time we did it, John, I mean, I left my body and I experienced things that, first of all, make this world makes a lot more sense, first of all. But also there opens up so many more questions, which is like ass backwards. You're like, how does how does something make more sense and also gives you more questions, but that's what it did. Now that's, like I said, I can come back and we can talk about all of this stuff, right? But
I
that's up to
really would
you.
like that. I
Yeah,
would
because
like.
because that is going into where we're headed. And I think that there are people who understand where we're headed, and then there's people who are wishful thinkers and don't have the experience and want to hope that it's going in that direction. Well, I'd like to think I feel it more so because through my experiences, that's where I've learned it. It's not just conceptualizing, like, um, so I've met some people that aren't human. I've experienced stuff like that, and I would love to talk about all that stuff, but
I want to talk about that.
like right now.
We can change directions at any time. This is my show. I'll do whatever I want.
Well, I respect that, but let's get back on the orb thing because I feel like the audience like that thread goes through all of this.
Okay. Okay. That's fine.
Um, and you're not going to forget about that. We'll remember to talk about that stuff.
Well, yeah.
I
I've got it written
so
down.
yeah. So and I did see a video lately that was actually two now that I think about it. Because of my experiences, I don't get to, I mean, there are crazy videos online. Don't get me wrong. You can find anything, a story about anything, right? But some of the experiences I've had, I don't hear other people say certain things the way that I experience them, like how the light works, like the orb, how it worked, what it did. Like you can't just make that up. And I mean, you could sit and try to make that up. And that's another thing is like a lot of these experiences, like I'll get off track, but okay, back the orb. So I started seeing orbs in the sky probably around 2010, I want to say it started then. And I saw one. Now, this is the funny thing is that in retrospect, it looked exactly like the one that I saw in my house. But because of the context, the first time I saw one in the sky, I didn't go, oh, there's that red orb again in the sky. It was like, what is this that I'm seeing? And so
It'd be like seeing a bicycle flying through the air. You would think, well, that's
yes,
got to be an airplane, not a bicycle.
yes. So I don't, and at the time so years go by before I actually connect the two, which is insane, but that's what happened. Okay. So, I see it, and let me think. The first time I see it in the sky, I was in Saylorville. So my dad's house, and I used to smoke cigarettes, and I went out to have a cigarette, and I'm just out there by myself at night. It was probably around 11:30 or somewhere around there. And I look up and it's calm. I probably hear bugs and stuff like that, maybe cars in the distance, but there's no sound, low real sound at all. I look up, and this is the other peculiar thing about this is that when these things appeared, I almost felt like a nudge to look there immediately, like before I even saw it. It was almost like
Maybe
versus
like it
like
was
looking.
calling to you.
Yeah, I'm not even joking. Like, yeah, I didn't want to say it like that, but that's that's it. And so I look up and there's this ball of red light flying right over me, like right overhead. And it's one of those things where like, of course you're like, that's a drone or the thing that made me say immediately, that's not a plane, that's not a helicopter, was the fact that it was a solid red ball of light. Okay. And if I were to see a helicopter, I would see the FAA lights blinking. I would see another color of light. I wouldn't see it red. It wouldn't be red. It would be blue or white. At least to my memory, that's what it would be. And you would have the blinking lights because that's just the law. Now, if it
Unless,
were
unless it's the government.
correct, but this is what tells me that it wasn't an object that was making the light because it was above me. You could make no discernible wings or anything other than a sphere of red light that was, like I described, how it was dense. You cannot see through it, and it did not glow past it. It was like, and it, this is the other thing, it was flying from west to east, a little bit south. So it basically was going southeast where I was at that time. Okay. That was, and it disappeared, and I went inside and I was like, that's weird.
How high up do you think this thing was? I mean, I know that is a dumb question because it's hard for anybody to figure it out. But I mean, did it look like it was 10 feet above you or hundreds of feet above you?
Definitely not 10 feet. I would say a few 100 feet at least.
And not like up where passenger planes fly.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
You could just tell. You could just tell it was close to me.
Okay.
But it was far enough away that it could have been the height of like a really, really good kite.
Okay.
You know, you know what I mean? But maybe even not that high. Maybe even half that height, you know? But it was at least a few 100 feet. I mean, yeah. Like, what would that be? Like 100 feet would be like 10 stories, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, somewhere around there, maybe 200, somewhere around there. But like, again, it looked like the size of a basketball or something. It could have been that big, or it could have been bigger than that, or it could have been
And that's
smaller
and
than that.
that's the other thing. Depending on how big it was, it's
Size.
going to change how far away it looks too.
Absolutely. But I think because of the way the light behaved, it felt closer.
Right. I mean, you were there, so you could have
Yeah.
told me it was 2 feet above your head.
Yeah,
You know.
no. It felt a few like a few 100 feet. So then later in that week, it was probably just a couple days, I was back at my place again, stepping outside to have a cigarette by myself, look up to the north, and there's a red light right above me, just in front of me. And it's flying coming from the west, but flying southeast. And again, it's like, look up here kind of thing before I look up. So it's like, I almost feel like I'm looking for something, and then I see it, and it flies. It flies a good distance in front of me, which would probably be equivalent to like like maybe a couple city blocks or something like. But then it just fades out,
And again, these
and
didn't make any noise.
no noise, zero noise, no blinking, no like, and they were slow, too slow to be like, yeah, it was so bizarre. So then later that week, and I remember it was a Friday this last time that week. So I saw three of them that week. Of all places, I was at the Iowa State Fair. And so this would have been August. And again, back in like 2012, somewhere around there. And we're on the sky lift. You know what that is? Yeah. And I'm looking again around, and I look to my left, and there's a red orb in the sky. And it's a distance away, but I can tell it's around the same distance as, say, the other two were. Um, and it's traveling southeast. And I'm looking at it, and I'm watching it, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, my daughter, my youngest at the time, and my girlfriend at the time was sitting with me in the skylift, and I'm like, guys, look at that. And they're talking. So of course it takes them some time. And by the time we look up, and it had disappeared.
Ah,
It had faded out. That's not coincidental to me.
yeah.
Now,
Wow.
this keeps going, John. This keeps going. Okay. So the daughter that I was with at the time, the same daughter that was 1.5 when I saw the one in the house, comes to me, and I'm almost positive that it was after these times. And I don't remember ever telling, I remember telling her about the one in the house, but I don't ever remember telling her about the ones in the sky. The reason I told her about the one in the house is significant because she was the baby that I was holding at the time, you know. But she tells me, and I don't remember how much after those three when I saw those three that week, how much longer after that this was. It could have been a year or a couple of years. It'd be easier if I just did the math, but I don't want to do the math. That same daughter, her name's Sydney, she comes to me and she said, Dad, I saw a red light in front of the neighbor's house. And I was like, you're kidding me. She's like, no, it was floating. And then it was like doing this, like she said she saw like sparkly in the center of it, but it was red and it was flying slow. And then it just went whew, real fast and flew away. She said super fast, like faster than anything she's ever seen move. And she drew me a picture of it with magic markers. So at this time, I'm on good terms with their mother and their stepfather, and we're talking about this, and I had never told them about the red orb in the house even, because I hadn't even talked to their mother about that at all. Never mentioned it at all. We're like talking about Sydney seeing this red light and described it to a T, exactly how and I told them about the light that I saw in the house because we're discussing this now. And she goes, my ex-wife goes, I think I saw that thing too. And I'm like, I practically swallowed my tongue, man. I was like, what? You what? What do you mean you saw it too? What are you talking about? She's like, I saw it too. But I was like, why didn't you tell me you saw it? And she said, well, because it was so fast, I didn't think I saw it.
But she could have asked you the same question.
Well, she knew why I didn't. It's one of those things like I was messed up. I was right. I was not present.
Gotcha.
So maybe that's why she never told me, right? But she also she admitted she didn't think she saw it. It took me and Sydney explaining our experiences for her to trust herself.
Wow. And she described basically the same thing?
Exactly. In the same bedroom, John.
Was your daughter present whenever
that I don't remember. That I don't remember, but she did. I do remember her saying it was in that same bedroom and that it was the same house, obviously. And okay. Yeah. So I've had feelings after that, and I've had lots of crazy things with, I just want to say, like the grandfather that I mentioned at the beginning of this, I feel like I've had many experiences with him since he's passed. He passed in 2004. And I started having really strange occurrences around the time that my son was born, which was 2002. But when my grandfather passed, I really started having strange experiences to the point where I feel like he may have saved my butt a couple times. Like he used to be a tank mechanic for World War II. He was a tank mechanic, and when he got out, he was a mechanic for automobiles and stuff. And I know nothing about cars, so I wouldn't know the first thing of why my car was not acting right. I would not know that. And there's times where I feel like he would help me with that stuff. And he told me that it was the catalytic converter. And I don't know that, I don't even know where that's at, much less what it does or
Wait.
anything.
When you said he told you, how did he tell you?
It just came through. It just came through here. Like it just came through. And like, it was like catalytic converter, and then there, it ended up being the catalytic converter. So like stuff like that, I'm just like, it's very peculiar. And one day I was sitting on the couch, totally new place. And I just had this overwhelming feeling, and it's really hard to describe. I wish I could describe the feelings better, but basically just a head to toe, the typical hair standing on end, goosebumps, heart starts pumping harder, and then kind of like, hey, look up here. And I look, and it's my grandfather's picture, his army picture. But like the energy in the room, right? That's what tells me, like, and the feeling that I had at that moment was, hey, it's me. It's been me. That red light. It's been me. It's me. I don't have any way to confirm that, nor do I necessarily believe that. But
So your
I,
grandfather had
I
passed
felt
before
it.
all these red lights?
Yeah, he had been gone since '04, and the first red light was in '09.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, those red lights, man. I don't know. I mean, I really, I have noticed through my research that they are very much a common thread with many different uh, paranormal, but also crypto zoology. And I think that people want to ignore it, and I think that it's simply because they've not experienced it. But once you experience it, you can't ignore it. How could you ignore something like that? It just brings more questions. You're more curious and you want to know more. Um, there was one woman named Ashley Stinnett that was on the Flash of Beauty
Yeah.
series.
Yeah.
She's the only other person that I've heard say some of the same things that I've said, only because I've experienced it, though. And her stuff gave me goosebumps. I'm like, I actually reached out to her and I sent her a message and just said thanks for sharing that stuff. And she's just kind of one of those, like, yeah, it's a crazy world, isn't it? That's kind of the response you get. Because where do you go from there? Like, oh, you see orbs too. She knows the rabbit holes that we go down. It's kind of unsaid stuff. But I think that it's all tied together. I think that orbs, Sasquatch, ghosts, UFOs, they're all related. And I think I understand at least the beginning of the feeble human mind understanding of what is going on and why that would be. But
I
it's only through
absolutely
my
believe all of
experiences.
this is connected because there's so
Yeah,
many common
absolutely.
threads between um, Sasquatch encounters, ghost encounters, and UFO encounters. There are so many common things that you hear, but I don't think people are talking to each other. I don't think you have enough of the ghost people talking
It
to the
hasn't got there
cryptid
yet.
people that are talking to the UFO people to figure out, hey, I'm having this too.
Well, I think that it's because it's just recent that the invisible ban of whatever has been lifted. And like, if you've noticed that there's a lot more of these podcasts where people are able to speak their truth and not be shunned and not be ridiculed, and you have the ability to kind of corral the positivity into a direction that is progressive and that helps the community. And whereas before it was more, I mean, if you get on someone's page and say, I saw Bigfoot, you just get laughed at immediately. But now I know plenty of pages, podcasts that have none of that. And I think it's because there has been a change. There's been a shift in who's running the show, maybe.
Well, not only that, I you know, even though nothing really came of it, um, the government basically admitting UFOs are real. I think everybody is pretty much has been on board with ghosts being real for a long time. Um, but when you have I mean, we're having congressional hearings about
Right.
UFOs. I think it makes people something go on and say, okay, well, if they're admitting UFOs are real, what else is real?
Hmm.
So maybe the
Yeah.
Bigfoot people aren't as crazy as what we think they are, which I'm one of them. I believe in Bigfoot, you know,
Yeah.
um, and I have no problem putting on my personal Facebook that I believe in Bigfoot. You know,
Yeah. Well, I think
15,
that
20
there's
years
a,
ago, I probably wouldn't have done
yeah, I think that if I exist, there's got to be
that.
a group of us, right? Of people that understand that these beings and these experiences explain why maybe we haven't gotten the questions or answered that we have because we're expecting the answer to be to look a certain way. What if I told you there were entire galaxies of beings of people? However, I mean, it's a concept, the concept of people. I mean, to say like only humans can be people, I think that's pretty narrow-minded. There are people that exist on other dimension or other galaxies that are not hard matter like we are considered. So it would be equivalent to a shift in the frequency. So like if our existence, if you have a scale of frequency from visible light to invisible light, and you got radioactive waves, microwaves, gamma rays, all this stuff, right? We know those exist. We're able to measure those on a device. So to think that it just, stops here, it doesn't. It continues and continues. We just don't have the ability, right? So we exist from visible light to physical, matter here to again gas and all this stuff. There are civilizations that exist here,
Right,
right? They only see the very high frequencies that we consider high gamma rays. Those are their low rays,
right.
and then it goes up from there. So there are groups of people that exist in infinite sections of this infinite spectrum, and you have Sasquatch that are in betweeners. They're not physical like we perceive ourselves to be all the time. They can maybe shift, or maybe ghosts. Same thing. It's consciousness. It's just shift in frequency.
There's a lot of Native Americans that believe that exact thing, and that's what they talk about. Sasquatch being is, you know, it's here, but it's not here.
Hmm. How is that?
Right.
How is that? I think that we have examples of it. We just overlook it because there's there's an element that's always shunned that kind of stuff, like the woo-woo, the witchcraft, the tribal people that can't speak English, and I mean, it goes on and on and on. The Black Line in Australia, where they killed Aborigines, the Native American people here. I mean, it just goes on and on and on of this reoccurring theme of wiping out ancient knowledge, wiping out their belief systems over and over and over.
I was listening to. I mention my buddies all the time. I was listening to Drunken Cryptids this morning, and Matthew brought up a good point. Um, we think we have the movies and the TV shows where aliens come and they're here to wipe us out. But that's because we think that all
That they're like
civilizations
us.
are us.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're told.
Right.
I feel like that's what we're told. Because if you ask a kid who's not seen any of that stuff what they think, I mean, it's not going to be what Joe Schmo, who's 40 years old, thinks, that's for sure, unless he told her that. But it's like, I feel like there's an innate understanding and we lose it, you know,
I
we lose
absolutely
that.
believe that. And that's why,
Yeah.
I've said it many times on my show. Don't always just tell your kids that's your imagination when they say there's a ghost in my closet, or I see something peeking in the window. It's not always their imagination.
I would say it almost rarely.
Now,
I'm wanting to say
I
that
do know that there was a time. I'm going to embarrass my son for a minute. When he was little, he watched Wizard of Oz for the first time, and that night he woke up saying that the giant head's going to get me.
The wizard, he's gonna get me.
Yeah, so he was thinking of, the wizard, the Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
the smoky head or whatever. That kind of stuff does happen. I mean, you do have to put it in context. But if your kid has never been exposed to horror movies, has never been exposed to any of that kind of stuff, and they start describing these things that adults are now describing, and they've never heard this stuff, maybe you ought to just at least look into it. There might be something there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we're supposed to have access to that when I was talking about bypassing the human body's limitation. I think we're supposed to have that access. I think that the DNA, that it has it there, that it's supposed to be there. I feel that through our conditioning, the way that we live, through the way that we're almost tricked into believing we want to live this way, like just on top of each other like a bunch of rats, you know what I mean? Like, um I don't know where I was going with that,
No,
but
I understand what you're saying. I do. Well, Adam, we've been going for like 55 minutes now. I would love to have you come
it's
back
just
on, though.
scratching the surface, man.
Right. Right. I absolutely feel that way. Would you be willing to come back on the show?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
100 times. I don't care. It'd be great. I mean, I don't think this is about me. I think that it's more so like like you said, we don't talk to each other about it. You know what I mean? I think that the more we do this, the more people become open to sharing what they're experiencing, and then through that we can tie the threads together and try to understand some of this, or at least get to a place where we feel happy in what we've experienced and how we perceive what we've experienced, like to not feel dissonant or paranoid about what we're experiencing, you know what I mean? And like as a community we'll get there, you know. But also I think meditation and like really going the route of like self-healing really brings about a lot of clarity to a lot of this stuff too. So that is also something that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
you
Adam,
know
like I said, I do appreciate you coming on. We're
yeah,
definitely going
man,
to have a
thanks for
part
having
two
me.
at some point.
Yeah,
We'll set
let me
that up.
know.
And
Hopefully you won't be sick or anything.
yeah. Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Right. I tell you what, it has been kind of a rough year for me. We gotten like
Well, I mean,
really sick
like
3 times.
yeah, my kids have gotten sick. They got terribly sick, and we went on a cruise this last year, and I got COVID off of the ship. And when I got home, I was so sick, man. I had never been that sick.
Yeah.
but it's been a crazy year.
Yeah. I think it's been
Thanks, John.
crazy couple of years, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since 2020,
Pretty much.
the world's flipped upside down.
All right, Adam. Well, I will set that up with you, and we'll
Yeah,
bring
man.
you back on for a part 2.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
And if you've had a paranormal encounter you'd like to share, you can email me at mythsandmullets@gmail.com. I'll talk to you later. Gotta go.
Shadow in the pines lurking in the dusky air. Bigfoot stomps through the woods like he don't care. Lights in the sky flash green then blue. Aliens descending with a secret or two. Whispers in the breeze, cold fingers down your spine.